All right, here we go. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, y'all. It's Morchat, General Manager here at ACE, and I'm really pleased to bring you another lightning webinar. So if you've never attended one of our webinars before, a lightning webinar is designed to deliver content in 15 minutes or less. And then we've got time for Q&A after that. So just a little housekeeping up front. Everyone's muted to cut down on my noise. However, if you do have a question, just type it into the Q&A section. If it's easy to answer, if they want to, Ben might answer those as they come in. Otherwise, we'll hold them till the end. And then you'll have a free Q&A time with Ben, our expert today. We are recording the webinar, and we're currently transitioning between our old platform and Zoom, which is our current platform. So we're working hard to make those recordings available as soon as possible. You can always check back at the ACE past webinar event page, and that's a library for our ACE members of previous webinar content that you can view. All right, so I'll dive into today's webinar. It is on how to make the most of first meetings with potential clients, presented by Ben Paul of the BD Ladder. And hurrah, that's my housekeeping done. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ben to introduce himself, and we'll kick into the webinar. Cheers, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly, and rest your voice. For those of you who couldn't pick that up there, Holly's not feeling too good at the moment, so she's doing a heroic effort being here with us today. Yes, I'm Ben Paul, the CEO and founder of a company called the BD Ladder. We are a business development and marketing agency that specializes in helping those in professional services. Anything from your marketing to business development coaching and training, all the way through to helping you write bids and proposals. But today we're going to talk about one of the most important things, which is how you make the most of those first meetings you get with potential clients. You work really hard to get them. They're really, really important in building your practice and getting those projects and a pipeline of work. But how do you actually make the most of them? So we'll go through that today. The first thing we're going to start with is what not to do. So avoid this over-presenting, this idea that this is your opportunity to go in and talk to them and force your credentials down them. I'd even say bring in a credential statement or brochures at that first meeting is too soon. I wouldn't do it. And the reason is you don't actually know what the client wants yet. This is your chance to explore and ask questions. So the less information you have and the less you try and present or force yourself in, the better it will be. They know that you want their work, because you've got the meeting and you're a consulting engineer, so they've worked that out themselves. And then really understand before you go what the objective of that meeting is. What is it that you're trying to get to, and what point are you trying to achieve? And it's not to close that deal, but it is to build rapport. And building rapport, great. Some people can get stuck in the idea that that means understanding everything about their personal life, and some clients just don't want to share that. It's great to have social chit chat, but really you need a bit more around it. That you need to understand more about what the client is and their objectives. Understand where they're trying to do, not just in the work that you want to do, but overall as an organization, be it government or private practice, what they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to get to. And the main objective is to have an outcome that continues the conversation or leads to a second interaction. And ideally a second meeting. If you can build so much rapport and get to a point where there's a natural point where the conversation will continue, that's been a really, really successful meeting. And that will eventually lead to work, and it will build that kind of more of a trusted partner style relationship. But how do you actually drive those outcomes in a client conversation? And when we've looked at this, we try and think about how it would sit in your mind and how it would play into, so it comes to a point, hence the triangle. You know, in any meeting, there's always a general discussion, and there's all these things going on. There might be ordering drinks, might be industry gossip, social chit chat, catching up. At some point, you'll get into the 3 or 5 things that are key to discuss, and you'll work around those. And hopefully you won't just focus on one, because if you focus on one, that can also be a trap, because people talk about the thing that's top of mind, not necessarily the most important thing to them. So it's really important to get to that. And then you should lead to 1, maybe 2 main outcomes, and there'll be a next meeting, a clear way forward, a greater understanding of client. Now, one thing to say, even though that is a linear, and I'm mindful that I'm talking to engineers here, no conversation is linear. They tend to go backwards, forwards, and around. So this just gives you an idea of where you want to drive to. So having that clear in your mind about all these things will help you prepare much, much more effectively. And do prepare the right things. Absolutely, you should research the client to a degree. I find sometimes that people spend too much time at their desk researching, looking through their website, looking through all the projects they've done, looking all through all that kind of stuff. And while that's important, you'll never know more about the client or prospective client's business than they know about it themselves already. So it's really important to have questions ready. Think about what questions are going to be the ones that they're going to respond to, which will help you get a better understanding of them. Most of you all have colleagues, so I actually think if you role play that meeting, if you play your own client, so you can get inside the mind of your prospective client and what questions you think will work with them, that's really, 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 really important. And do have your short examples and case studies prepped. So someone will ask, have you done this before? You want to be able to say, yes, we have done it before, or we've done something similar. This is what we did it with there. These are the types of things we did, and this is what the outcome that led to, and this is how it was delivered, and this is what the client said. That's a really simple way of having that in. And if you have that ready to go in a short, concise fashion, it will land. And that's a really good case study or case story that people will relate to and say, that's the person I want to work with. And have an agreed agenda. Some meetings, even with prospective new clients on that first meeting, they kind of drift. And they kind of drift because no one's quite sure why they're there. So prepare an agenda and send it to the client in advance. Get the client to agree to it. Get it out the day before the meeting. And I wouldn't even do it earlier than that. I actually think a day before these days. Most people will look at their diary, see there's a meeting tomorrow, and if an email comes a day before with an agenda, they'll feel really prepped. You can, of course, put it in the Outlook calendar invite, but I'm not convinced that everyone reads that these days. But make sure in that agenda there's a point where the client speaks first. Get them to say that the purpose today is to find out more about you, what you're trying to achieve, those kind of points. That really, really builds more engagement. So how do you build rapport in a moment? We have some social chit chat, of course, but you don't want to get stuck on it, which is why it's important to have an agenda, because you can say, look, I really enjoyed hearing about the weather, your kids, but I'm just mindful we've got an hour or half an hour. I thought we could get back to the agenda and get into that. So that's really important. Ask those engaging questions. So those ones that are more open-ended, what are you trying success in it? What is it when you're engaging with engineering consultants you particularly like? All those kind of great questions. And do check in. Don't assume that what you've heard is correct. So if someone's that, be happy to summarize that. Just clarifying, is that what you meant? Is that what you're looking to do? It's really, really important and avoids those assumptions. And as I mentioned earlier, use that agenda to stay on track and keep the conversation where you want it to be. But this is one of the most important parts, and this is the part that leads to a second meeting more often than not, which is get the client to say what's next. Don't force the next steps yourself. Don't say, we've had a really good meeting, we'll go back and we'll send you our credentials or we'll send you a proposal. Ask them what they'd like to see next. They may ask for credential statements and proposal, in which case you say, okay, that's fantastic. What is it you're particularly looking to see? What would you like me to put in that for you? Get them to ask what they'd like to see next. And it can be as simple as, look, it's been a really great meeting. Where to from here? What would you like to see next? Really, really simple questions. And the reason behind that is if they commit to it and say what they want to do next, they're invested in it and they've bought into it because it's what they want to do. And now you're traveling on the path with the client rather than trying to force them on your path. Way, way, way more powerful. And then the seventh point here, and this is the final point here, and it is a lightning session, so we've gone through that in a good time, is do send a follow-up. Send it the same day. Send it short and sharp. And it's just summarize the agreed actions. This is what you said you can do. This is what we're going to do. It looks super professional and organized. It keeps everyone on track. It shows that you're responsive and keen to work with them. And look, we put that image there. And the idea behind this is it's a sort of summary that should be read on the phone. These aren't meeting notes, minutes. They're simple. We had a chat about these three things, and here's the two actions we're going to do. And this is what we're going to do them by. Get that out. Absolutely fantastic. And that in a nutshell is how you build that engagement in a real lightning fashion. If you've got any questions, I'd love to hear them. We're going through a more in-depth thing with ACE here, which you'll see the links to there. We're running training courses in Wellington and Christchurch, where you can really learn how and the skills and what types of questions to ask, and do those role plays in a safe environment, and I can guide you through it. And we did one in Auckland this week at GHD, and it went absolutely fantastically well.
Thank you so much, Ben. Exactly as he said, like this was just a little teaser for y'all. If you do have any questions, pop those in the Q&A or chat. Now's your opportunity to really ask. But yeah, lightning webinars, they're designed to be short and sharp and real teaser information. So I think those are some really good key points about what to do with that first meeting, potential clients. Obviously, you would do things differently once you've already had a couple of meetings or you've landed the client. And so either of those workshops are designed to really focus on, let's see, how to have those kinds of client conversations, like once you've got them on board or you're further into that relationship. And even if you're kind of on the fence about it, I want to really encourage you. These workshops are designed to be, more intimate. So you will have a really good opportunity to bring your own experiences, your own clients, your own case studies, examples, and to get some really, close coaching. Not going to call it one-on-one, but you're not going to have to share him with a class of 40 or 50 people. Like you're going to have a really good time to get some specific answers to the challenges you're facing in your business development pipeline. So and even if it's not for you, if there's someone on your team that you think would really benefit, I highly encourage you to consider these courses. So cool. Okay, well, let me check back in, see if we've got any questions that have popped up. Cool. So Gavin wants to know, what happens if we ask the client for next steps and they take action? For example, they'll come back with more detailed requirements. Should we then chase them post-meeting if they don't follow up? Maybe after an initial email?
Yes, and there's a really important question that applies to anything here is, that's great, you're gonna take action and send that. When will you send it by? Get them to say when it is, because that then gives you a point in time when you can chase it without being a pest and it doesn't feel awkward. And it's the same with any kind of proposal or fee proposal that might go out there as well. If you agree when they're going to give a decision by, you have the perfect opportunity to chase them up. So it will always feel like you're probably asking more questions than you're used to, but the more questions you ask, the more agreement there is and the more abilities there is to chase up. So yes, you send the initial email, and if it's next Thursday they haven't done it, just reminded you agreed to send this by to us this Thursday, hasn't come yet, just checking in. I know how life is busy. So it's really, really simple.
Well done. And I think that's a great question. Dan wants to know, what happens if you start to realize this is not the right client for you? Is there a nice way to say no thanks?
Yeah, half tempted to give them to the competitor you like the least and pass them their way. But that isn't the professional way to do it. Look, if you realize that it's just not a good fit, you can actually say, look, I've really enjoyed getting to know you more. Having understood what you're looking for, actually, I don't think we're quite aligned or that's quite the right fit. But I do know a couple of people out there that I think would be more suited. Are you happy with me to refer them? And I think that last part's really important. Do it in a good way, because if they're looking for help, you can refer them on, and then they're more likely to actually refer you to other people in their network, because they'll see you as someone who's helped them, not just said no thank you, but actually look to try and give them a proper solution to what they're looking for.
Well said. That's always the tricky one. You want to burn a future bridge that you might want to reapproach later.
Yeah.
So Lauren has a question. I'm loving these questions that are coming in. What is the best option to set up the first meeting with an unknown client? Is it email, phone call?
It's about the message, and it's difficult to say what the medium is, particularly because everyone's different, and if you don't know the person, it's hard to say. As a general rule, the more grey-haired amongst us might respond to phone calls and then emails going down, and some people will even respond to messages on LinkedIn. I found success with all three things. The key point is, though, to get that meeting is to say that actually I'd like to meet you to understand more and share what we're seeing, best practice around the place that might help you around. Or if we meet, maybe I'll be able to share some contacts. There needs to be some value to the other person in meeting, and not in selling your services, but more around kind of helping them out in what they're trying to achieve or giving them some ideas or whatever it might be. There needs to be a value point and an outcome to that meeting they understand.
That is some great tips. Let's see, we've got a follow-up one from Dan. Do you have any
Yep.
added thoughts for first meetings with iwi?
I think in essence, make sure you understand the culture and what the greeting would be and be guided by them when you're meeting them. But in everything else, it's the same. It's a business meeting. There is no difference. So once you've got that cultural thing in it should be the same types of questions. I mean, iwi are some of the most serious business and serious investors in our country. So just making sure you understand the culture and then proceed on in the correct way, guided by them. And it's a really great opportunity because if you are slightly apprehensive, you actually have to throw it to the client to guide you in that culture, and they'll lead you through, which is actually the best practice in a client meeting anyway.
Well said. All right. So I think this is some fantastic questions that we're getting from the audience.
Yep.
I'll maybe open it for another couple minutes. We'll see.
Yep.
Feel free to type those in if you do have any. I know that I personally have, it's really good to also hear reassuring things. I handle the sponsorships for ACE New Zealand. I'm right in the thick of it right now. So, hey, any of our viewers, if you're interested in sponsorship, reach out.
Yep.
But even just to have the reassurance that's like, cool, what I'm doing is right. We're reaching out. And I like your answer to the, how do you approach a cold call is the old phrase that people used to throw around. How do you cold call a new client? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn message? Is it calling?
And picking up on that a little bit, I find even if I am making a call, if I've sent an email or even a letter, which I may do depending on the type of person, if I've got the right material to send, then I'll follow up with a call, and I find it has a higher response rate. I think it gives them, it feels like on the other end that you've given them some information or something beforehand, so they're prepped for the call. I think from our point of view, it gives you some confidence because you know why you're calling, you've already sent something, so it makes that call process a little bit easier. So over the years, I found that approach really does help. And look, that's the great thing about these courses we're running as well. As you go in, we get people to do real life scenarios with upcoming meetings or potential clients, and we do both existing clients or potential clients, and they run through it. And at the moment, if they get a bit stuck and they do their role plays, they'll ask me questions, and we just pick up little nuances, and they should leave actually ready, prepped for the next meeting and good to go.
Fantastic. I'll share one tip that I've started doing that usually helps is if I leave them a voicemail, I let them know, well, I'm also going to follow this with an email. And then my email, I say, I'm going to follow up with you in 2 weeks. And generally, if they don't want me to keep pester them, they will reply immediately and say, hey, thanks for thinking of me, but it's a no right now. And so kind of in that reverse order, me saying, I'm going to follow up with you. If they're like already knowing that they're like, it's a no from me, I'll usually get a reply from them quicker than if they just keep ignoring. I still get people who ignore me, don't get me wrong, but so I don't know if you've seen that much or that response with people a bunch.
Yeah, look, absolutely. If you give dates or give people a good reason to either say yes or no, then they'll take that option. Might tend to do that later in the piece. I tend to keep it quite open, so I don't give them the easy no to try and build that engagement early on. But certainly at some point, I think you have to decide whether it's worth your time or their time, and forcing that decision at some point later. If you're going to go to the third or fourth one, then it probably makes sense.
That's a really good tip that maybe I'm jumping the gun too early. So there you go to all of our viewers. You got an expert tip. Sorry, Dan, I missed your follow-up. Is how soon after an email do you phone? Is it a few hours, a few days?
Probably at least 3 days, 4 days. And look, it would depend. If I sent an email on a Thursday, I might phone on the Tuesday or Wednesday next week. I probably avoid Mondays and Fridays. I think most people are in Mondays, they're in internal meeting hell. I mean, internal meeting, getting stuff done within their organizations. And on Fridays, they're probably thinking about what they're doing at the weekend and moving into a kind of way where they don't necessarily ready to open to new ideas.
Fair enough, for sure. And Laurent had a follow-up that was, I think,
Yep.
similar to what we were discussing, is if a request for a meeting via email is ignored, how do you take it? I.e. the client not interested, or continue pestering them for the meeting?
Look, it's a really interesting thing. I think over the last few years, with the rise of emails, and if anyone looks at their inbox and you leave it for 2 hours, you can see a sea of unread stuff. Things just get missed, and people have meant to do stuff. You can either re-prompt with an email and say, look, hey, just checking in to make sure if there's something you wanted to do or didn't want to do, or you could just pick up the phone. I think that's fine. Just closing the loop that way. And a similar kind of time to what you described before, give it, a week or so. I have found that people respond to emails pretty late. I've had someone respond to initial email about 9 months after it went out. So it can be quite slow, but people do get to it. I wouldn't take it personally if someone ignores it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a no. It might mean they've just missed it.
Fair enough. Wow, that 9 months. I always think I'm bad replying in emails after a couple of weeks is my usual average. So apologies again if anyone's waiting on a reply from me. But yeah, so that's I think good advice as well. You never know what's going on in their life. I mean, aside from the business pressures that we all feel, they might be going through something personally. We at ACE New Zealand, a big topic that we're trying to focus on is mental health. So I know a lot of us are facing burnout and stuff like that. So I think having that reminder, not personal, who knows what they're going through. But you've given us some really good tips, I think, about how to follow up, when to follow up, and that kind of things. And then like we said again, it's not an ACE webinar unless I can just, encourage you guys to sign up to something else, some other event we've got. But if you do have more interest, I really encourage you to consider these workshops where you'll be able to bring your own real world examples and get some pretty good coaching from Ben. So brilliant. Okay, we haven't had any new questions come in for a couple of minutes, so I think we'll wrap it there. Obviously, awesome. I want to say thanks to you, Ben, again for returning and delivering some stellar content for us. Thank you so much to our audience for giving us a bit of your time today. And if you are interested, Ben has those links to the 2 workshops. And then always check the ACE events page to see what other events and webinars we've got coming up. That's at www.acens.org.nz/events. Okay, well, y'all, that's it from us. Have a fantastic day, and thanks so much for tuning in. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.